Welcome to this live presentation where we're going to talk about tools for editing videos and podcasts with a specific focus on tools that save the most time and tools that boost production quality. So professional editors use and experiment with an assortment of tools. We usually don't just have one that we use. And these tools can change on a project by project basis. You might use one tool for one client that you never even touch for another. Editors' jobs are increasingly more diverse with a vast range of specializations, things that they specialize in, and things that clients are asking them to edit for them: podcasts, YouTube videos, vertical videos, repurposing, management, and admin. I mean, repurposing here is a big one, whether it's to take their full podcast episodes and turn them into vertical clips for social media, or it's to take their full podcast episodes transcript and turn that into a blog post or a newsletter. And then, the management admin stuff. Are you going to post their podcast for them on YouTube and Spotify for podcasters or Buzzsprout or wherever they're hosting their show? All of this stuff falls into this bizarre new job title, you could say, as a podcast editor. And it's very hard to actually find a podcast editor who has all of these skills. The more diverse skill sets and offerings that you have, then the higher demand and the higher rates that you can charge. And there's not any of these kind of skill sets offered in traditional education. So it can be hard for us to learn. And most editors that you encounter, whether it be through Upwork or if you find one on social media, they have self-taught themselves. Many of them are musicians or they come from the world of film. And then many of them are just DIYing, learning things on YouTube. So it's hard for us to know from the client perspective how to find good qualified editors that we know may be able to offer this whole range of services. And you're probably no stranger to that being the reason behind our program, the video podcast edit lab, where I will get you clients or I will get you editing and Veronica will get you clients. This is our 12-week coaching program. And stick around into the end during the Q&A section, and I will tell you about that. But you can find out more about this program. We do have a new cohort coming starting August 26th. And you can find out more about that by going to podcastingsmart.com/editlab. I'll also leave that in the comments and the description of this video presentation when I'm done here. So make sure you stick around for that. But let's hop into what I call the powerhouse combo of plugins or of tools. And for me, it always comes back to Adobe Premiere and the Waves plugins. So that, specifically for video podcasting, I hope that we can all agree that podcasts should sound really good. The audio should sound very professional, whether there's a video component or not. And so that's why you see the Waves appear here, is because we have to use professional audio treatment and audio plugins with our videos to really make them stand out. And what's really cool about this powerhouse combo is you can do all of the editing in one application. And there are reasons, again, to use Descript and use CapCut and use all of these different fun AI tools, maybe get into 11 Labs to generate some weird AI voices. There's always use cases for that stuff. But this is what I like to call the powerhouse combo. And then after that, my two supplemental, or what I call support or repurposing tools, would be Descript and CapCut. And I'm actually going to share my screen in a minute and open up all these programs and we'll take a look at them. And then, of course, ChatGPT. We won't open ChatGPT, but I mean, ChatGPT is just in everybody's workflow now, right? And then Reaper is still my go-to digital audio workstation, which this logo is Reaper or Reaper.fm, or Adobe Audition. And the reason now that I'm really leaning into Adobe Audition so much more and am now going to be supporting Adobe Audition completely inside of our editing programs rather than Reaper is because you already have likely the Creative Cloud subscription that you get with Adobe Premiere, and that comes with Adobe Audition, as well as After Effects and Lightroom and Photoshop and all the amazing professional applications of Adobe. So huge Adobe fans, and there are strong reasons for it. But let's take a look at the difference between these and why Premiere and Waves wins out as the powerhouse combo. I'll just open up Premiere and show you some of my favorite features in there. And then we'll compare and contrast that with Descript and with CapCut. So let's see now if I can find, here's Adobe Premiere, and it looks like you can see it too. This is the fresh bare project, I just dragged in this video file. So here, the reason that Adobe Premiere wins out is really just for its professional capabilities. And that really comes into play when you want to get complex with maybe a multicam sequence, multicam editing, and really just sort of advanced layering. You want to add a lot of B-roll elements. Anytime you need sort of the next step of professionalism. But then specifically, it's also really great because it has an audio track mixer that works much like a digital audio workstation where you can use your Waves plugins. And I'll demonstrate that here in 1 second. And then it also has really good color correction. And I actually really love the color profile in Adobe Premiere. You hear this argued with colorists a lot that they prefer different solutions for their color correction. Now, Adobe does have a color correction app that also comes with your Creative Cloud subscription. It's called SpeedGrade. And then the other, say, industry popular for highest level of professionalism is DaVinci. The DaVinci Resolve by the Blackmagic Company. They have incredible color correction capabilities. But there's really no other program that really can just be the all-in-one powerhouse in the way that Adobe Premiere can, especially when you want to use, especially when coupled with, I should say, your Waves plugins. So I'm just going to drag this piece of footage here into Adobe Premiere. There's a really cool quick key that you need to know about. It's the tilde key or the back tick key underneath the escape key that will full screen anything that you're hovering over. So I could full screen my timeline down here. I can full screen my program monitor. I can full screen this project panel. I mean, the tilde key is just amazing, and you should probably give me a thumbs up here in this presentation for that. But here you see, this is a portable podcast episode that Veronica and I filmed in a coffee shop. And on its own, it might just kind of be boring with this one static shot. So this is an example of where we might want to use Adobe Premiere to create a multicam sequence. So I can quickly illustrate how you would do that. You just duplicate this shot a couple times and you can rename it to make sure that you stay organized. So I could say Steve on one of the shots, and then on the other shot, I can duplicate it and I can say Veronica or just Vero. And then I can drag these in there. You can also double click on it. It'll bring it up in the source monitor where you have the drag video only icon here. That's really fun. You can just plop it in there. Do the same thing with Veronica as we'll double click on it so that the Veronica file shows up here in the source monitor. Click and drag and plop that down in there. And now on the top layer where Veronica is selected, I can just go to the effects control panel up here and kind of resize it. I can even type in 170 because I know that's a good scale. Move her over and kind of create what you could call a Veronica shot. It's okay that my arm's in there. And when I do this, I still like to keep the person who's on the right more off to the right side and the person who's on the left more off to the left side. So there's Veronica's shot. I can now toggle her track output with this little eyeball icon right next to her track here. And now do the same with the Steve shot. I'll just type in 170 and kind of resize by dragging these little sliders up here, if you can see me doing that in the effects controls window. Her face is still in there, so let's scoot over a little bit more and maybe something like that. I think that contrasts pretty well. Let's scoot Veronica over a little bit more too in her shot. And something like a little bit more towards the center. And we'll do that with my shot. And then now we have also the wide shot underneath it. So now I can grab all three of these shots together. I just kind of marquee dragged to grab all three of them together. And I can control click or right click on a PC to bring up this thing. This is called the context menu, and you're in here all the time in Adobe Premiere. And here I would choose to nest this sequence. When I make a nested sequence, I can call it multicam. And then now with this multicam nested sequence nested together, if I control click on it again, there's this option, multi-camera, and I can choose enable. And now what it's done is it's actually created a multi-camera shot. I can change my settings here to actually see the multi-camera view. And look, it's assigned the number 1 to the wide shot, the number 2 to my shot, and the number 3 to Veronica's shot. I really like that numbering. And so now whenever I press the 1, 2, or 3 key on my computer, it switches the camera. But I'll go back into composite view because I know this is probably mind-blowing if this is your first time seeing this, because now I have a camera switcher right here just by pressing 1, 2, or 3. So now you can do what I like to call a term that I've coined, the switch and cut. And this is where you can do a camera switcher as you're cutting through and editing your footage. And of course, Premiere has these amazing quick keys and like just the easiest, quickest way to edit through or to do timeline editing. And you can press the Q key to do this top tail trim. And then at the end of it, you have the W key that will do your bottom tail trim. Those are fast little things. And it has all these tools like the splice and dice tool here, where you can cut up little pieces. You can grab the negative space in between it to make these edits. And the editing is just so intuitive and fast. And then, of course, when you're over the shot that you want to change to the other camera, you just press the 2 button. And then here, I want it to change over to Studio Steve, so I would press or to Veronica, so I press the 3 button. And now I have a dynamic interview where the shots change. And then finally, to just say why Premiere is just the boss right now in terms of editing tools is because of this audio track mixer. This audio track mixer is amazing and wonderful. And it also has a way, if you click this arrow, there's an arrow in the very top left corner. When you hover over it, it says show, hide, effects, and sends. We have our inserts and our sends here. That may sound complicated if you don't really know much about audio production. Don't be intimidated by these terms. Just got to learn what they are. An insert basically allows us to insert a plugin on an audio track. So this first audio track here, what I would actually do is I would separate this audio into different tracks, and then I would title this first track Steve, and I would have Veronica's audio separated onto her own track called Veronica, which is another reason Adobe Premiere is great compared to something like Descript, where it can be a lot more complicated to do that. Here, if I needed to do that really quickly, just to show you, all I have to do is hold the Option key and drag down, and it will copy that. And then again, to my context menu, I change my audio channels just to the right side, and that's Veronica. And then on Steven, I would do the same thing and change the audio channels just to the left side. And now I have Steven on one side and Veronica on the other side. I can make that bigger so you can see. They look like stereo channels still, but you can see that now I have the obvious big wave files here when I'm talking on the top here, and the big wave files down here is when Veronica's talking. So I can see all this stuff is noise that I need to clean up, right? And I can treat this exactly like I would treat audio in a digital audio workstation and have amazing sound on my videos, professional sound on my videos. And you can do that here by inserting your Waves plugins, and most famously would be the Studio Rack. And the Studio Rack is really this amazing plugin from Waves that allows you to build your own chain of effects. So it comes like this, it's just blank, and it has a chain where you can just pull up some really cool effects, like my favorite compressor in the world, the 1176 compressor, that'll sound juicy and delicious on your voice and way outperforms the AI compressors that you find in a lot of applications, and also the compressor that comes here with the Essential Sound in Adobe Premiere. This is a much tastier and delicious plugin. Of course, we have the NS1 noise reduction. This is a magic plugin. We have the Clarity VX noise reduction as well. And also we have the Clarity D reverb if we need to get rid of the reverb. And also just a single knob, really easy to use plugin with some amazing technology. These plugins technically are a little bit AI as well. And then, of course, EQ, the F6 EQ, classic EQ unit, where you can dial in your own podcast voice EQ settings in your presets. And so all of this can actually be on its whole preset. Notice here I have this saved preset podcast voice starter with all of my classic podcast effects. All I have to do is go in and determine, hey, do I want a de-esser on this? And I usually always use a de-esser. And I add the de-esser, I add all my professional effects, and it's really nice to have this professional audio production capabilities right here, right where you're editing your video. You never have to go into Adobe Audition. You never have to go anywhere. You can do everything here. And then, of course, when you're done, you can do the color correction right here as well through this Lumetri color panel. It has its own auto-suggested color correction that you can try, that you can start with just by pressing the auto button. And that a lot of times does all you need it to do. I mean, just by me A-being that, you can see it's made a big difference in the image quality or our perception of the image quality. Then, of course, there's third-party plugins and effects you can purchase for Adobe Premiere as well, like skin softening effects. And there's also transition effects and text effects and all sorts of things that work directly in Premiere Pro. And then, of course, there is the Adobe link, the dynamic link between Premiere and all of the other Adobe programs. So yes, you can now transfer this project into After Effects or bring it over into SpeedGrade to color correct it, or bring it into Adobe Audition to treat the sound even more professionally with even more audio precision, audio engineer precision. So that's Adobe Premiere. I hope we're all still hanging in and having a great time here. I will get into the comments. I want to leave that to the end so I can trim them off the replay of this. So keep dropping them in there. I will get to them. Quickly, though, let's just look at now CapCut. CapCut is a really powerful editing solution. It also has an app on the phone. It's very great for vertical videos. Also really cool for effects and transitions. And it does some crazy things. If you need a quick like background remover on one of your videos, notice in this video here, I've demonstrated that. I added this background remover effect here. It has this auto remove, and then it removes the background. You could always drag that on top of the shot before it, and that way you can kind of hide text behind a person or do kind of some wacky kind of effects. This is to date probably the best video background remover that I've been able to find. If you know of any greater solutions than this, please let me know. But this does a pretty good job. You'll notice though that there are some spaces where it's just kind of wonky and it doesn't, yeah, like, the light pops off. It's not a perfect technology. You can also add different strokes and shapes behind it as well and make some pretty cool effects right off the bat within a few clicks. The other thing that CapCut does that's really cool, if you don't have another skin softening solution, is they do have some pretty impressive skin softening. You'll see here with the retouch tab along the top, you can choose to retouch it. I can kind of A/B that. Let me full screen it without the retouch. And then we'll quickly full screen it with the retouch. You see, it's kind of like an Instagram filter, right? Really retouches your complexion and kind of softens your complexion, which could be really nice and a little extra touch for your clients. And you can do that right out of the box here in CapCut. CapCut also has some very impressive shaky cam reduction. So if you have footage, handheld footage, maybe from an event or something that a client has sent you, you can always kind of stabilize that footage. Adobe Premiere also has that. It's called the warp stabilizer. It's an effect you can use in Adobe Premiere, but that is another standout effect here. And then of course the captions that CapCut does are really cool. There's also a ton of really cool transitions that happen immediately just by clicking on them. You can download them. It also has templates. Many of the templates are really geared towards what you could say a younger audience, the vertical video clips, the high paced, low attention span, quick moving transitions and everything. There's a ton of that stuff. So that's what I said very early on in this presentation is the tools that we use are very much going to be specific to the client that we're working with or the project that we're working on. We might use completely different tools. So CapCut, and CapCut has a free version to download and it's really fun to play with. Of course, I would recommend upgrading to CapCut Pro if you really want to unlock all of the effects. And then finally, here's just a shot of Reaper. I love Reaper. It's always going to be kind of a go-to supplemental tool for me, especially for grabbing audio or doing quick audio fixes. I use it all the time to fix audio or treat audio that we capture live before sending it to an editor. And then the editor doesn't really have to do as much of the audio treatment. So I'll actually do the professional sort of audio treatment with those Waves plugins I just showed you directly here. The same Waves plugins that we just looked at. We're processing it here in Reaper as well. And that's why these Waves plugins are so cool, is because they work with so many different programs. And then, but Reaper, especially when you compare it to Adobe Audition, is just so clean, very low CPU usage. It pops up so quickly, very simple just to open up one track and record something. So it's always going to be a go-to for me for lots of reasons. It just has so many professional capabilities and it's free to download. And then it's just a one-time $60 after that during a very long trial period. And then finally, Descript. And Descript is a powerhouse. Descript has insanely exciting implications as far as the future of where it's going. This is a blank project in Descript, but where Descript really stands, or where it stands out, where it's really notable, is obviously in its transcripts and also in editing. I would say, let's see if I can drag some files onto here. I got to pull them down to this screen. They're on the wrong screen. And pull them down here. Come on, they won't come down here. I'll have to X out of it. See if I can make that happen. I'm gonna drag some files into this project in Descript so that I can kind of demonstrate what I really like about it. And as I was saying, what the real standout features of Descript are obviously the um, transcript abilities, and we know now with AI and ChatGPT how valuable transcripts are. So Descript is something that we use constantly every day in our client work and our own content creation, and it's just really is just this powerhouse of a program. It's a wonderful place to start as well if you need everything in one place, and you can really achieve everything in Descript that you can achieve in other video editing software. And perhaps the real standout thing about Descript is the time saving features, which is the big focus of what tools we want to use is how much time we can save. And so if you're going to do a very simplified video edits with very few layers, not a lot of multicam switching, not a lot of sort of fancy animations, then Descript is perfect for that. It also has an immediate active camera speaker view, which is what I'm trying to illustrate here. If I could find the files to illustrate for you, I might have to actually stop sharing here for a moment and find those files in a way that I can drag this thing off the monitor up here. There it is. I got it. And then if I share the screen again, it will work. And I can find those files that I wanted to drag in here. And well, the files that I wanted to drag in here have not yet downloaded, but basically files that you would get from Riverside. Also, Descript has integrated into it Squadcast as well. So you can record locally and virtually with people directly with your same membership that you use with Descript. And then those files load up into your Descript project. So let me just instead go back and find an old Descript project that we can use, and then I'll share that screen with you to illustrate some of my favorite things that I love about Descript. But as I was saying about the implications, them working with OpenAI and also the new Underlord that they've rolled out somewhat recently. The studio sound feature is really stand out and cool. And sometimes the studio sound feature can actually change or improve or fix the nasty audio that even those Waves plugins that I just showed you can't fix. And so it's very much an AI sound improvement plugin. You can say just one button and you kind of have this podcast sounding voice. And while it's really impressive, it still is not quite to that highest professional level that you get from the Waves plugins, which you would say Waves plugins and Universal Audio plugins are the highest sort of digital plugin professional tools used by audio engineers, professional audio engineers. And now they're so available to consumers and creators and any editor at any level. So I highly recommend checking out Waves plugins. The Waves plugins, however, do not work with Descript. And so that's also a reason why Descript for me isn't the powerhouse cornerstone yet. And then the very time-saving features of Descript, which is transcript editing. They also have a wonderful double playback speed that you can take advantage of. It's really cool the way you can make scenes by pressing the backslash key. But all of the time-saving features of Descript are perfect if your projects are simplified. If they're just two shots, a very basic podcast episode from Riverside or Squadcast, or a single camera. But if you want to zoom in and do that multi-camera thing that I just showed you in Adobe Premiere, then Descript actually becomes more of a time sucker. And that's where you actually would lose a lot of time in your workflow trying to make some of these more advanced video editing things happen. However, it is very quick to drag B-roll footage into, and also really stands out in terms of captions and subtitles. A lot of really cool options you can do with captions and subtitles. So as a very common workflow that you find editors doing is you'll see people bouncing around from Descript to Adobe Premiere to Reaper to CapCut and to any other solution, and kind of sharing files between programs in different ways as they're editing. And sometimes it can seem like an insane mess of a puzzle piece you're putting together, but we're just looking at solutions basically. And as we're editing, we have a vision in our mind and something we're trying to fulfill for our own content or for a client. And we just need to find the quickest, most efficient, highest production quality method of doing so. And so it's best to be well versed in lots of different programs. And that's kind of what it is in today's editing environment? Is it, used to be you could have a certification perhaps in one program. Like I have a Pro Tools certification, but what does a Pro Tools certification really mean or do for my prospective podcast clients? Do they really care if I have a Pro Tools certification, or do they care that I have this diverse set of skills where I can not only edit their podcast, but add captions and titles to it, and then also repurpose that into small vertical videos for them, and then also turn those into maybe GIF animations for a community post on YouTube and blog posts and, shortened LinkedIn articles. And then, hey, if they want to pay me even a more premium price than that, I could also do all the admin stuff. I mean, I already have their transcript and Descript. I may as well take that and add that to their YouTube channel, upload the video that I exported to their YouTube channel for them, add the subtitles, add the description and the SEO based title. And, I mean, the list goes on and on. I think you get what I'm getting to. And it's really just the increasing need as an editor to have a diverse set of tools and to always be very kind of what we call not become software centric and not become too reliant on one piece of software. And that's something that's been very hard for me as myself. I was a stubborn Pro Tools guy, and I had to try out Reaper because our audience at the time was not going to be able to get into a $600 complicated program like Pro Tools, and Pro Tools really shines with the expensive audio equipment anyway. So it sort of forced us into this beautiful way of being open-minded and quickly dropping your judgment and just trying out these new applications as you learn about them. And that will also keep you at the front line. That'll keep you producing really cool content that really wows your clients. And that is the end of this presentation. I hope you found that wonderful. I'm now going to answer any questions that I saw in the chat and trim this part of the video off. So again, if you're interested in becoming a Pod Sound School certified video podcast editor, make sure that you go to podcastingsmart.com/editlab. We are enrolling for our August 26th cohort. Our August cohort, really exciting. This is actually the first official time in the history of the Edit Lab that it is now the video podcast Edit Lab. And we're really pulling out all the stops and really going in and focusing in on video, because when you go to Upwork, when you go and you look at where on all the job platforms, Indeed, even ZipRecruiter, people, when they're looking for podcast editors, you will find a lot more jobs where they're looking for video editors, video podcast editors doing video support. Then you'll find with people looking to do audio only. And perhaps that's because the audio only folks, and there's always going to be a place for audio only podcasts, but the audio only podcasts may be more inclined to edit their own shows. It could be one of the reasons, but we think that the reason is because of the growing popularity of video podcasting. And also, as podcast coaches ourselves, we will not allow you to have a podcast without eventually incorporating that video, because you're just missing out on undeniable opportunities for growth and reaching a bigger audience the second you turn a camera on with your microphones. And so for that reason, in our podcasting program that's also coming up in September, Smart and Simple, what used to be Smart and Simple podcasting is now Smart and Simple video podcasting. We're putting all of our efforts into video podcasting. And so that's a program if you're a creator to be on the watch for. And we have our first pioneer launch of that program that Veronica has been working so hard on over the last year. And that is coming out in September. So make sure that you watch out for that. Stay subscribed to our channel, and I will catch you on the next video. Let's get to the Q&A.